Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Cavalieri. I'm the Director of Stakeholder Relations and Innovations at MealSuite. And today I have Alex and Melanie with me for our session, our LinkedIn Live session on best practices in food service technology. So let's just take a minute so Alex and Melanie can introduce themselves and then we'll start. Alex, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thanks so much, Julie. Excited to be here with you guys this afternoon. And good afternoon, everyone out there. My name is Alex Prony. I'm the Vice President of Nutrition and Food Service at Seasons Care Dietitian Network. So Seasons Care largely provides dietitian consulting services, largely in Ontario, long-term care, but we also have partners across Canada and in retirement homes and other sectors as well. As the VP of Nutrition and Food Service, I oversee kind of our additional division of services and projects. So from education to menu planning, recipe development, MealSuite implementation, and a number of different things. That's a little bit about kind of what I do from day to day.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Melanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Veldman. I work with Schlegel Villages. I've been with Schlegel now for almost 12 years in various food service roles, and now in a supportive role. My title is Hospitality and Food Specialist, and I support our leaders across the organization in their food service departments.
Great. Okay. So I would ask that anybody who's listening live right now, you can, along the way, post any questions that you might have, and we can answer them at the end. Also, if you want to put in the comment in the chat, just introduce yourselves and where you're from. That way we can see who's on and we can interact with you a little more that way if we know who's on. Oh, I can see here. You can't hear anything. So I will just ask my team in the background to see if they can fix that. In the meantime, I think I'll continue and we'll go from there. Okay, I think, okay, great. Yeah, I think we're good for the sound. Nice. Thank you, Virginia, for posting. So what we're going to do today is talk about best practices and food service technology. At MealSuite, we work with so many organizations like Seasons Care, like Schlegel, on implementing solutions for their food services and their dining. And so we learned a lot doing that. And so we wanted to bring them on and so that we can share and provide you who are listening with some efficiencies, help you with some efficiencies in your operations, bring back a time to your client with direct interaction with your client by making things more streamlined on the back end. So with that being said, I think I'll start with our first question. I guess this is for both of you, and Melanie, maybe you can go first. You've already explained, a little bit about yourself and your experience in the industry. Can you explain what maybe some of the main benefits are of integrating technology in your food service department, and what leaders should know?
Yeah, technology can offer multiple different things, especially in Schlegel right now. We're definitely looking at many different options, even as far as robotics in the dining room. So using robots in our dining room to support with staff shortages, dining room efficiencies to minimize steps for our team members walking back and forth to the servery, the workload. So even the robot can then even carry trays of juices from one end of the dining room to the other, and then it could be multi-purpose, used for recreation programs. The use of MealSuite Touch has been a huge benefit for our company. Using residents are now more aware of the nutritionals. It's all of our menu items are posted in the hallways, and they have the access just to tap on the menu board and see the nutritionals. They can see different diets, textures, what's coming up, special events. It's been very helpful. It also helps minimize the risk between MealSuite and PCC, keeping all of our diets and textures current and up to date. So then in our serveries, we're able to hopefully minimize risk for choking, that the diets and textures are always current and flowing through PCC. technology can also offer in different ways of using it to take attendance in our retirement dining rooms, which is another huge concern these days. We're even looking at technology for composting food waste that then minimizes staff, so they're not lifting the risk for staff injuries, so they're not lifting heavy bags of garbage. And then that composter also then tracks the amount of waste we have. So then we can look at our menu and see what residents like and what they don't like. So there's definitely many different ways that technology can be used in food services. I think we just have to be open and willing to look at it.
Yeah, you brought on some really good points, especially with the waste piece and the service standards. I think that's really important because it helps create some consistency in your operating practices. So that's a good point. So I would ask Alex, maybe this one I'll ask you. Why is adopting the technology now so important in senior care food services?
Yeah, I think it's more important now than ever. If we've learned anything over the last few years, is that I forget exactly what the quote is, but the only thing that's constant is change. We have to be nimble on our feet and be flexible. When I think where I work for the most part in long-term care in Ontario, we've done things the same way for a long time. So I think technology really allows us to be ready for change, be flexible for changing residents, changing demands. We've had recent update to regulations, which also allows some flexibility in menu planning. So I think it's really about the flexibility. And we've learned too that, staff are hard to come by. So we need to really maximize every minute spent in the food service process. And that's true in every department in our communities, but it's really about maximizing efficiency, maximizing time. Melanie made some great points about reducing steps, like the actual physical steps that people are taking. So I think the reason for now is for flexibility and to be ready for the future.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that. The only constant is change. You're right. And so we have to be nimble and keep up. So I think I'll ask both of you. Maybe I'll start with you, Alex, because your journey from Melanie's journey on implementing technology is different because of your roles and who you serve. So Alex, what was your own journey with food service technology?
Yeah, I've had a very, a lot of variety in my experience, which has been great. I've got to work with a number of partners through Seasons Care and in different projects and different roles in implementing Meal Suite, coming in from the implementation from the start and really helping some of our partners set up the whole system, and then coming in to maybe support people that have had the system and, had some turnover and aren't using it anymore and maybe are looking for efficiencies or perhaps with some updates and enhancements to their technology they needed to kind of start fresh with how they put data in and how they're using the system. So to speak to my experience, Julie, I've had, like I said, the luck and the honor to work with a number of different partners across the industry. So been a part of all different pieces of implementation.
Yeah. So your perspective is quite varied, which is good, a high level view. But Melanie, you're in the weeds and you've seen it from a completely different point of view. So what was your journey like in the downs?
It's definitely evolved. I started obviously as a frontline leader working alongside my team and rolling out Meal Suite and working through all the bumps and the resistance and working through with the team on getting it up and rolling. And then now into a supportive role where I can then support the leaders and thinking futuristically on what we could be doing to better, to create more efficiencies in our dining room. So really working through the change management piece and then trying to think outside the box in an innovative way. And then providing training, obviously, to our leaders and team members and all the different aspects that Meal Suite has to offer. So just seeing what's the best fit for our home.
Yeah, and training, when we say training, just because we say something once doesn't mean it's translated into a knowledge or information that people can use. So training might have to take on different forms. Adults learn very differently than, younger people. And so when we think of training, we really do have to be adaptable to various training needs, and not just once. Training doesn't mean one time and it's done. So that leads me into my next question. Maybe Melanie, I'll ask this one for you. What would you say are some of the biggest myths when it comes to onboarding technology? And
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay. Something I hear frequently when I visit homes is that it only works sometimes, or it's not user friendly. I think a lot of, like you said, a lot of adults learn differently, and sometimes there's a fear to it of taking on that change. So it's working through that change management, I would say. Technology these days, like, we've come a long way. It does work. It's not just sometimes, it's working almost all the time. So I would say, some advice would be to work through those fears and those barriers alongside that team and find out the why, and maybe get them to understand the why it's so important to be using technology these days.
Yeah. I agree. I'm gonna just only because, Alex, you talked about the only constant is change. So is embracing change easier than it sounds?
If done well, I think it can be easy. I don't think it'll be perfect, and I don't think it'll be 100% smooth. So to add to kind of what Melanie was saying in terms of really communicating with the frontline users, making sure they understand the why, and letting them know, there will be hiccups along the way. So we're not expecting perfection. And some days, you might get frustrated. I think explaining that one of the myths I see a lot is frontline staff feeling like it's adding to their workload. So understanding that once we get through this change management piece, there's actually efficiencies here, or you're able to do your job safer. The communication is on both sides. The other people in the dining room are on the same page as you because you've all got this live, accurate information to refer to. So I think that that's a big piece as well. Yeah. And sorry, Julie, I don't know if I answered your question. I was bouncing off what Melanie said there.
Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, I think you did. But maybe I'll ask Melanie, because again, I said it before, you're in the weeds. Is change, embracing the change? I know we're saying the only constant is change, but is embracing change at the front line easier than it sounds?
I think you have to evaluate, for any leader that's going to be embracing change, especially in technology, to really evaluate if you're ready to embrace it. If you're not, if you're just not in a good place, your team's not in a good place, it may not be a good time. So making sure you're ready to embrace the change, and maybe identifying your barriers, or whether they're people or things, and try to get in front of them before they become a barrier. And then communicate. I don't think you can communicate enough, and being, like Alex said, really transparent, knowing that there might be hiccups, and it's going to take being realistic with realistic goals. Even it might take a month, it might take 6 months, and taking baby steps. So, if we're rolling out Meal Suite Touch, maybe you just do one neighborhood at a time, or one servery at a time, instead of, rolling out to an entire village. So making sure everybody's ready for the change.
Yeah, chunk it out into smaller pieces, so it's not as big of a.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't appear to be bigger than what it actually is, and chunk it out. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to ask both of you this question. We'll start with Alex. What is the number one piece of advice for care leaders who may be considering starting with technology or upgrading their current practices?
That's a big question, Julie, but I think if I could summarize, I think time spent planning is time well spent. A lot of times we get these exciting, innovative ideas and we just want to run. So I think slowing down a bit at the initial phases and really starting that conversation, starting the change management process sooner than later. Think ahead a little bit. So slowing down enough to say, okay, how are we going to use this in a couple years from now? Today, this is what we need, but where are we headed long term with our food service operation and the delivery? A lot of our homes are going to see renovations and new builds. So thinking ahead, and I think slowing down to start is a great
Mhm.
first step.
Yeah, the planning phase in any project cycle should be the longest, right?
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
we'll need multiple iterations. Like Melanie said, like evaluate, is now the right time? And maybe that same plan that worked in one community doesn't work at another. So really taking
Mhm.
that time to stop and plan and reevaluate as you go. And there will be lessons along the way. So be humble as well, and listen to those lessons, onboard them, and pivot accordingly.
Mhm. Yeah, great advice. Yeah, Melanie, what's your number one piece of advice for leaders who are thinking about putting technology into their food service departments?
I'd have to agree with Alex. I think evaluating the readiness of the home is really key, and then really walking through those change management steps with communication, making sure that you've thought of everyone to even communicate to, whether it's family members, residents, team members, anyone that may, it may be a food service technology, but it does affect housekeepers or PSWs. So really, you can't communicate enough and plan. I
Yeah.
think, and then being present would be the other major or bigger advice I'd give, is being present as a leader, being present with those frontline team members or staff members to work through the hiccups with them.
Yeah, walk side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah, great advice. So I would encourage everybody who's on the live to post any questions that you may have in the comment box. And if you haven't done so already, let us know who's on, your name and where you're from. There is a question that we can start off with. There it is. What's your advice for leaders whose teams may be resistant to new technology? And both of you can answer that, either or.
I would say I would find out the why. Why are they resistive? I would want to know the why and try to work through that together. And it may just come down to a fear, or like Alex said, they may think the workload's going to increase or it's taking away their job. It could be various reasons, but finding out the why first, and then again, communicate and work alongside them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. To add, I think if we're talking about the why, the how too, the how as well is what I meant to say. But, I think communication is only successful if it's received and retained. So just shooting an email or just posting something really doesn't check the box of I've communicated. So how does staff receive information? Is it, sometimes we staple stuff to their pay stubs. Is that really communicating? So really being mindful of the methods you communicate, maybe asking at the home level, what works well for your staff? Do we need to have a little event where we can talk about this, a little in-servicing? Is it a video or something up on the learning platform that they use online? So I think if we talk about the why, the how, and how we get those messages across sooner, the better.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's one more question. I don't see any other new ones, but there is one here that, how do you compare the technology options out there, and how did you choose the best one for you?
Sure. Maybe I'll go first on this one. If that's okay.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a good old pros and cons list. So I think starting with your goals and then truly, look at different systems and work through a pros and con list. I would also highly recommend going on site and seeing the software and the technology being used in person. I think that really can make the difference with understanding how well it will fit in your community as well. So those would be some of the steps I would suggest as a starting point.
Yeah.
I'd have to agree with Alex. Identifying what the need is of the home or what the pain point is that you're trying to find a solution for. And then what are you looking for from a tech company? Are you looking for, what kind of support would you be looking for? What kind of, is it local? What things kind of matter to the organization or to the home? And use that as a starting point.
Yeah. And yeah, I love those comments, and especially around, what are your goals, like specifically to your community and or the larger organization, but not just your goals now or any immediate needs now. It's like looking into the future. How do we serve our customer 3 years from now, 5 years from now? So yeah, I mean, all these are great suggestions and comments for everyone listening today, watching us today. There is a question from Carol, and I believe it was just answered. With many different types of technology products available in the industry, how do you evaluate and prioritize for your community? I'm thinking it was very similar to the last question, but do you have anything else in terms of prioritizing the technology for, which community or who needs it the most? Or
it would depend on, I believe, what the risk is or what the pain point is. So again, if we're looking at staff shortages, for more of a support level, you'd be looking at which home needs the most help right away and maybe use that as a starting point. It depends what the goal is.
Yeah, goes back to short-term and long-term goals. Yeah, but that risk piece is really important. I mean, there may be an immediate need because there's a risk in the department or a risk to the reputation of the home or to the corporation. So that's actually a really important factor too. Okay, there's a question. We've talked a lot about village and home level rollout. Any suggestions on how to roll out technology at the head office level? Alex, you've done a lot of head office planning. What do you have to say?
Yeah, it's a great question, Virginia. I think we're talking about similar kind of approaches, but maybe some of the goals, maybe some of the training looks a little bit different. I think sometimes from the kind of head office level or the support office level, people from other departments or maybe who have focused on other things don't always have the time to give to these types of things. So I think really making a champion at that level as well is really important. So having kind of a super user or a project lead at that level, and then finding ways to get buy-in from other members of that leadership team, explaining to them how it crosses over into their work and what the implications would be for the staff that they're supporting and leading. So I think very similar approaches, but maybe just attacking it from a different lens, and the resources might be a little different. And again, maybe it's more, demos or allowing tours, those types of things to some of the colleagues at that level.
Yeah. And I just want to call out in terms of head office. I mean, if there's different sites have different needs and different sizes and different combinations of things. And so a pilot, a single pilot, may not suffice, to meet the needs of everyone. So, sometimes more than one pilot that use different work streams might also have to be planned for. And to your point, Alex, about the planning phase has to be well thought out and long in process because of at head office, you're dealing with multiple sites. It's almost like a plan. There's the general plan, and then there's the plan for each site, which complicates things, but it's not that complicated because there could be lots of areas where there's, you could duplicate the work. So I think that is all we have for questions. I'll just give everyone another minute or two. You can enter in who you are and where you work. If you have any questions, we do have a little bit of time left to answer anything. And while we wait for that, Melanie, do you have any final words for anybody listening on implementing food service technology at their site?
I don't think so. I, again, just have an open mind and ask questions and give feedback. I think, I think really embrace it. I think it's the future. Thanks for having me today, Julie.
Thank you for coming. Alex, any parting words before we sign off?
Well, again, well said. She's a hard act to follow. She's well spoken. But no, just to kind of add to what Melanie said, I think looking ahead, being flexible, and being aware of what's to come. We have a changing resident population ahead of us, and a lot of challenges that we're currently facing and that will continue for some time with the HHR crisis. So really looking to technology to solve problems. There is certainly an implementation workload, but once up and running and once everyone's on board, there are the benefits far outweigh that initial workload and putting those things into place. So certainly consider it. And like Melanie said, think big.
Great. Thank you. Great parting words from the two of you. Thank you, Alex from Seasons Care and Melanie from Schlegel. You've been a great conversation today. And for anybody listening in, if there are any suggestions that you might have for a live, we can do more in the future. And we would love to know what you're looking for. And other than that, we'll sign off and we'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.